everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the foXnoMad podcast. I'm your host, foXnoMad Anil Polat. I've got a fantastic episode for you today. My guest is Hanna Johansson. She is a adventurer. She is a motorcycle rider. She is a writer. She is a photographer. We talk about her extensive trips over 78 countries, riding on motorbike, what it's like packing for those trips, planning those trips, how it was for her to quit her job and embark on this adventure. We get into all of that. I think you're really going to enjoy this episode with Hanna Johansson. Thank you, Hanna, for being on the podcast. The reason I hit record, I tell every guest this, I think I start every episode like this. I hit record very quickly, is because I have gotten into some of the best conversations ever with people and not hit record. So I'm always like, let's hit record. Um, so thank you. For joining me on your time home now in Sweden.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very happy to be on the show.
So I want to. There's so much to talk about. I'm really fascinated with sort of what you're doing now, but how you got to this point, which is taking these epic motorcycle journeys. But if you look at your Instagram and your website, it says that you left your job in marketing to start traveling the world on bike. And I'm curious what your life was like before and how you made that decision.
Well, yeah, I had a really nice job. I loved going to the office. So there was nothing wrong with it, you know. And my colleagues, they were great. But it was just like one day I just felt like life has to be more than just seeing the same four walls every day and doing the same thing over and over again. And I felt like I was pursuing my dreams after work or like on weekends and holidays when I was on vacation. And I felt like it was wrong that such a big percentage of my time here on Earth would be like work, and such a little time would be doing what I really wanted to do with my time. And maybe I started thinking this years before I actually did something about it, because it was scary, really scary, to quit. And I think I was walking around with my with the document in my pocket for like 3 or 4 days before I finally, gave it to my boss. And I just explained how I was feeling, and they understood me. And my first freelance job was actually a job from them, so that was really great. But I was working in marketing, also a marketing coordinator, and for some time I was also a campaign manager. It was fun. But yeah, then I quit and I bought a motorcycle for my last savings, and then I just hit the road and I haven't stopped riding since then.
And that was 2017 or
Yeah,
so.
that's correct. That's correct.
And did you, I have, well, a couple of questions actually. When you
Yeah,
quit your
shoot.
job, did you have a plan for what to do after, or was it, I'll quit, maybe I have some savings, or I'll just see how it works out, or?
Yeah, I was thinking, I knew that I would be able to live on the road for at least 3 or 4 months with what I had. And I was hoping that during this time I would be able to freelance as a photographer, copywriter, or something with marketing, social media, or something like that. So I was very happy that I got this first freelance job from my from the company that I was working for full time. And I was thinking that if it doesn't work out, then all right, cool. Then I've done something at least, and I tried, and then I would just go back home to Sweden and apply for a new job somewhere. So that's what I was thinking. Like, I'm gonna try. I'm just gonna jump now, and then we'll see, like, where I end up and what happens. But what happened was that I found more and more jobs, and I could continue doing it, and now I'm still doing it. So and the dream was actually to become like a digital nomad. That's what I put down in my diary, at least. I've gone back just to see like how I was phrasing my dreams back then, and it's really cute to read what what I was writing down, and it makes me very grateful today for what I have and how it turned out.
So what was it more of a sort of romanticized version, and now you have sort of a reality to put that to? Or what are some of those things that you would 6 years, 7 years ago you didn't really realize was going to happen?
I had no clue.
Hmm.
I had no clue. I didn't know what I was doing. I just read online about other people like working remotely. And I was thinking, okay, what I do is something I could do remotely. So I'm gonna try. So the dream was just to be able to travel and work at the same time. And yeah, that was the plan. I didn't know how. I had one thought actually to make it about traveling also, like writing about my trips and tourist guides and stuff like that, because I am a photographer, so I love that. I love photography. And I do know how to write. So that was a part of the dream, not the plan. I don't know. Sometimes the like the line between dreams and plans, it's a very fine line.
Yeah, no,
Um,
it sort of sounds similar to what I did a lot
yeah,
earlier than you, but it's sort of the same. I was like, I give myself this amount of time. Mine was 8 months, and if it doesn't work out, I can always go back, right? Like at least I tried. And now it's been so many years since, and I'm just sometimes I'm like, I can't believe this is my life now. Like so yeah, I totally understand that kind of just seeing where it goes, and it is very unpredictable to see where the path is, right? Like especially when you first make the change.
yeah, yeah. I can't stop smiling right now because that's exactly how I feel. So it's yeah, it's really cool to hear somebody else say the same.
So now that we're at the point you left your job, what do your friends and family say? You know, how is the reaction from your circle? How does that go?
Well, one fun example is actually my dad. He's this kind of person, he loves routine.
Hmm.
He needs to know like what he earns like every month. He needs to know like on the cent, like what goes in, what comes, everything. Um, so he kind of got stressed about my situation. I wasn't stressed, but he was.
Hmm.
So he even asked me at one point, like, Hannah, I don't know how much longer I can do this. How long are you gonna live like this? Because he was so stressed. He couldn't really see the freedom and see what was so nice about it. I was the happiest ever. It's like if I made like 700 euros one month, I was still the happiest ever. Like I would just stay at cheaper places and stuff like that. And it was never about like how much I would earn. And it was okay for me to know that it goes up and down. He could not understand that. Now, so many years have passed, and now he understands me. He understands like my way of living, and he sees how happy it makes me. So, of course, some people cannot understand, and some people are a bit jealous, and they wonder like they basically want want me to write like a guide for them how to
Hmm.
do it. And that's so hard because everybody's so different, and there are so many different kind of alternatives out there, and maybe some suit you, some don't. But yeah, so the reactions are very different.
Very different. Yeah, and also at people asking you to write a guide, it seems like there
Mm.
really can't be a guide to follow your exact path because it's so specific. Um, so had you been riding bikes before? Did you have experience, with riding motorcycles, or was that also a new thing?
I had the idea when I was a kid, like when I was 6 or 7 years old. I told my parents that I wanted to start riding motocross,
Hmm.
and they thought it was just like a phase or just some, kids idea that you got one day and then the other day it would be gone. And also they didn't have the money, they didn't have the finances, to finance such an expensive hobby for a 7-year old. So I got to, I played soccer and stuff instead, which I'm also very happy about that I did, because some of my former teammates are still my best friends today. But then I was still talking about motorcycles when I was 17. And that's the age when you can start practice riding in Sweden, at least. And my mother is a rider, so she has a riding license. My dad or brother, they had not at the time. So she was like, okay, I'm gonna pick up riding again. And so she bought a motorcycle for herself and then a cheaper model for me that I could practice on. So she taught me how to ride outside of the house in this small town in Sweden. And it just, or actually at the beginning, I was a bit mad at the bike because I didn't really understand the relation between like the clutch and gears and everything. But once it finally clicked for me, it felt like I became one with the motorcycle. And I cannot see myself not riding. It's a big part of my life today, and I just feel so free. I love riding my motorcycle. It's a really big part of who I am and what makes me happy.
Mhm.
So yeah, I was 17 when I started. I took my license when I was 24, and I went on my first trip when I was, or actually I went on my first motorcycle ride abroad when I was 26, 2016. That was in the US. I rode a part of Highway 1 in California. And that's when I decided that, okay, my life needs to be about this. Um, so the year after, that's when I quit my job and I did this whole thing. But I had never ever gone on a long trip before. So I had no clue what I was doing. Like, how do you pack for a motorcycle trip? I didn't know. And what happens like if I'm just stuck somewhere and I don't find anyone who speaks like English, what do? I didn't know anything. But what I was thinking was that, I mean, how do you gain experience? Is from going out there and do it, right? I
Mhm.
mean, you don't gain experience from sitting at home watching others doing the same thing. So I was thinking, okay, I'm just gonna get out there and learn by doing.
Wow.
So that's how it all started. Yeah.
What was the first trip? Where was the first long trip that you took?
The first long trip was in Eastern Europe,
Mhm.
because I had a world map at home. You know, one of those scratch maps where you can
Yes,
scratch
yes.
the countries where you've been. And I saw that when I was done scratching the countries where I've been, I saw that the west and like southwest of Europe, it was all scratched. But I had not been anywhere like in the east. I was
Mhm.
thinking, why is that? I started to do some research about Eastern Europe. I was like, wow, it looks pretty cool. I want to go. And I had a look in Google Maps and I saw that I could actually make this into a road trip. And if I'm going to go on a road trip in Eastern Europe, it has to be on a motorcycle. So after I quit, I actually booked a ferry ticket from Sweden to Estonia, like before I even had my bike, my motorcycle. And people ask me like, okay, but what if you don't find a motorcycle before the trip starts? I was like, well, okay, then I'm gonna go on a bicycle. I don't care because I need to get out and I need to do this. But then, like 3 weeks before the ferry, um, I found my motorcycle. It was a Triumph Bonneville named Bonnie today.
Right.
She's so gorgeous. And people told me it was the wrong kind of motorcycle. You know, it's one of those modern classic English retro looking motorcycles. It's so beautiful. But people told me that if you're gonna go on a long trip like this, you have to have an adventure motorcycle, which is those like big rockets that you
Yeah.
see. Um, but that style, it doesn't really speak to me. Um, so I was just feeling like, okay, if I don't like this, like going solo, riding this kind of motorcycle, I guess I would just ride like for a few days and go back home and change or, do something about it. But no, I was out for 3 months and I had the best trip ever. So I visited 19 countries on that trip, and it's still one of my favorite travels so far.
Wow. So are you camping? Are you staying in hotels or is it a mix of both when you take this trip?
On that trip, I did not camp, because Eastern Europe is usually quite affordable. So I could find places to stay, like hostels, uh, and places like that. And also have you heard about couch surfing?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. It's an online community for travelers where you offer your couch for free, and in exchange you can stay on people's couches all over the world. So I use couch surfing too, and that was really nice. I met so many great people with couch surfing. So that's what I did. I surfed and I stayed at hostels and very cheap hotels. I don't think, yeah, I spoiled myself in Kosovo. So I stayed in a very nice hotel there. It was like 50 euros or something like that for one night, breakfast included. So that was
That's always the best thing about a hotel. Even if it's like just like an egg or a piece of bread they give you, I'm like, I always think like classy. You know, if you get even something for breakfast, it's just nice. Um,
yeah.
so did you like when you're taking this trip, are there things you're learning as you go, both about, I would assume about the bike, about the, taking a longer trip like that, and also how to navigate accommodation, food, where to stop. How did you plan, or did you not plan very much?
I like to not plan too much um, because I don't want to have like a fixed schedule, because I think I would miss out on things if I had. But when it comes to the motorcycle itself, I tried to learn as much as possible before I left on those 3 weeks when I had it. So I changed the tires and the chain and oil, fluids, stuff like that, and practiced on punctures and the most common things that could go wrong on the road. I practiced a lot, and I downloaded all maps offline, I think, and stuff like that. Yeah.
And
And
is
then
there?
yeah.
Oh, sorry. No, yeah. Go
No,
ahead,
please
please.
continue.
I was just gonna say, is there something about the Triumph bike that you learned, or that is for the people who are saying you need an adventure bike? Is there something that you said, no, this bike is really good at this, or it might be better in this situation?
Well, usually the adventure bikes are more suitable for like off-road and longer roads. It's more comfortable. Maybe the seat is softer. You have heated grips. You have a heated saddle. Maybe big boxes for your luggage. It's more built for a comfortable longer trip.
Hmm.
For me, it's more about the style,
Hmm.
honestly. That's why I wanted to have this kind of motorcycle. It's just, it inspires me so much. And since I'm into photography and everything, it's like I feel more when I put a motorcycle like that in the picture than
Hmm.
those big adventure motorcycles. And then I got stubborn. It's like when people tell me you cannot travel on a motorcycle like that, I'm just going to tell them, hell yeah, I can. And now I don't want to stop because I want to continue showing it, even though I've ridden a few adventure bikes now and I think they're nice. But now it's more like my stubbornness that, makes me continue on the modern classics, honestly. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's just more built for longer trips. But what I want to tell people is that it's not impossible to ride
Hmm.
long distance on a modern classic. You can totally do it. It's just up to you and what kind of comfort you need to have a nice trip.
Are there any highlights from that Eastern Europe trip that you think like that was a great day, or that was a funny moment? That,
So many,
that
so many. It's like when I was gonna enter Belarus, I don't speak Russian, and it was just uh, no one there spoke English. And I got this document that I need to fill out, and it was all in Russian. And I didn't know what to do. And I was like looking around, like, are there any other bikers here? And after a while, a man comes up to me on his Vespa, and he was from Belarus, but he had worked in Germany, so he spoke a little bit of German. And me myself, I studied a little bit of German, like in in school when I was like, how old was I even? 12, 13 maybe. But his little bit of German and my little bit of German, we could actually talk to each other with that. So he helped me out with this, and we had a really good time. He had coffee with him. So we were standing there together, like having coffee while the border police were going through our luggage and stuff like that. So that was a really nice moment where I just clicked together with this guy, on those words in German that we could. And also I met a motorcycle club in Bulgaria called Brothers of the Wind. You imagine those like big Bulgarian guys and this little Swedish girl going out in Sofia. I had such a good time with them. They really took care of me like I was their sister. They even dubbed me to their little sister of the wind before I left and continued on my trip. And I still talk to them today. They still send me messages and call me like, "Hey Hannah, how are you?" And they even came to Sweden at one point during winter, and yeah. So
That's awesome.
yeah, and I think all of my best like highlight stories are about people that I met, and it could be anything from just like a border control to a whole weekend with people. It's so much fun to connect with people when traveling.
Hmm. And after this trip, do you then, what is your next move from there? You've done the trip. I'm assuming you're taking some work here and there, or you're still on saving some. But now at this point, do you go, okay, what is my next move, or do you not plan it out that much?
I think that when I realized that I could do this, because in 2017 I thought that okay, maybe I can do this for like half a year or a year and I would be happy. But when it was like 2019 and I realized I'm still doing this, I was like, I can't stop. So 2018 and yeah, before COVID, I was traveling all the time. I was traveling all the time. I was just looking at the map. I was looking for cheap flights and stuff like that. It was like I couldn't stop. So during COVID, it was kind of good for me personally. Of course, COVID wasn't good for the planet globally at all, but for me personally, it was good for me to slow down and to try to find like a balance in traveling, being home in Sweden and working remotely the way I wanted to. So today I think I found a very good balance. I try not to think about my next move all the time too much because then I kind of lose the moment where I am right now. And I really want to feel grateful for where I am right now and be here and now. But that's something I had to learn because I was always, as you mentioned, like thinking about, okay, where I'm going to go next, what I'm going to do when I get back home, and I need to plan. So right now, for the first time in a very long time, I don't have anything booked. Okay, except from like a few small family trips,
Hmm.
but like nothing big. Yeah.
Hmm.
I'm gonna try to just relax and enjoy summer, ride in Sweden, see my family and friends, and then we'll see. But I like feeling like if I want to go somewhere, I could just go. And that's the
Hmm.
freedom. I don't need to ask for anybody's permission.
Hmm. And when you were, going from Eastern Europe now to South America, I would assume is a big jump, right? It's a different culture, roads, environments, climates. How did that trip happen after you took the Eastern Europe trip?
Well, between Eastern Europe in 2017 and this trip now in South America, I've been to many places around the world. And it's always very different. But I've learned to see also how similar we are. So even though like the climate is different, roads are different, languages, road signs, anything, like of course all of that is very different. But the people, we are very similar to each other. Like everybody just wants to have a good life, spread love, and try to make things as good as possible for their loved ones. So once you realize how similar we all are, it's very easy to connect with people. But yeah, I think that Japan is probably the country where I felt the most like, oh wow, everything here is different. You
Hmm.
ride on the left, I didn't speak the language. I didn't understand the letters and the alphabet. But even though I felt like an alien there, it's like it only took me a few weeks, and I learned, how to adapt to their culture as well. And South America is also interesting because it's almost like riding around in Europe. You say that you go to Europe, you are in Europe, but Europe is divided into many like countries, and it's the same in South America. You say that you go to Latin America or South America, but the truth is that it's very different. Brazil from like Chile, it's like two different worlds, even though it's the same continent. So that was very nice to explore the difference between the countries in South America as well. And again, how similar we are still.
And I think some people listening will probably think like, okay, you're on a bike, you're by yourself. It's a vulnerable position to be in. And some people so might be thinking like, are you scared? Are there dangerous situations? Or you mentioned, people around the world are mostly the same, which I find as well. Most people are just trying to go about their daily lives, right? Like but how does it feel when you're out there alone? Do you feel this sort of freedom, or is it, when you encounter people, what is that sort of like?
I feel very free, very, very free. And if I'm scared, that's probably one of the most common questions I get. And I don't think it was until I started getting that question very frequently that I started thinking about it, because I'm not walking around being scared for just nothing. I would say that's close to being paranoid, and I try not to be paranoid. I try not to come up with scenarios in my head just for, but also, I mean, of course, I need to be thinking about risks. If I just went like naively into the world on my own on a motorcycle like that, of course, bad things could happen, but bad things can happen anywhere. Bad things could happen to me like right outside of my door here in Sweden as well, or when I'm walking at night in Stockholm. That's not safe either. So I try not to be paranoid, and also I try to be street smart. And there's a fine line between those two sometimes. But I'm never scared. No, not if the situation doesn't call for it. I mean,
Mhm.
it's not like I don't have any feelings. It's like
Yeah.
if something happens, like if actually in northern Chile, I was in a cafe having a coffee, minding my own business, and being super not scared, just sitting there, enjoying my day. And a guy who was probably high or something walked into the cafe, and he had like a weapon or something in his hand. Then, of course, I got scared. And there was another woman in there, but I mean, the other locals, they were scared too. So when stuff like that happens, it scares everyone. It doesn't matter if you're a traveler or a local, it's a scary situation. So one of the women in there, she just walked up to me and she said, "Okay, come with me." And then together we just walked outside and let the people who was working there, like they handled the situation very well.
Mhm.
And the guy was gone, and then we could continue with our day. But yeah, that was scary, but it was just as scary for me as it was for the other woman, and she lives there. So
Mhm.
uh,
Mhm. Yeah, and you had a post recently where you mentioned, just using your instinct, your gut feeling.
yeah.
And I think that's a valuable lesson. But how do you sort of, what would you, tell somebody, like how do you know that it's your gut rather than paranoia, I suppose.
That's so hard to know. And unfortunately, I think that you need to go through some stressful moments to know the difference. Because once you felt scared, or once you have felt your gut feeling and then something actually happens, then you will know the difference between paranoia and your gut feeling. So that's after the guy walked in there, or the reason behind I made that post, it was a drunk guy at a reception in a bed and breakfast. I just felt something, you know, in my stomach. It was like, okay, something is off. Something is off. And maybe it was a little bit of paranoia too. I don't know, but it's like I just recognized the feeling. So I backed out and like, okay, cool. Then I don't need to be here. I found another place. And I made that post because I also think that the gut feeling or the alarm system that you have, it can differ between people. So why I made that post was because I wanted people to share how it works for them. So maybe other people could read that and yeah, just identify their own gut feelings and how to stay out of bad situations. But for me, it's just like a small tickle of discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
Usually like, yeah, my gut or like in my chest. It's just poof, a small feeling of discomfort. It's never something big. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, maybe if like a bear would jump up, okay, then I would just be super scared and that would be a big feeling. But my gut feeling, I would say, is just a small discomfort. And when I feel that discomfort, that's when I back out.
Mm-hmm.
So, and paranoia, that's more like a thought than a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Then I think something like, oh, but what if this could happen? Then it's a scenario that I just made up in my head. It's not this like small discomfort feeling in my stomach. So that's the difference for me, at least.
But like you said, yeah, it can vary for everybody, but it's good to know
Mm,
what that is for you and what your tolerance for risk is, right? So in certain situations, you know, maybe your risk tolerance would be higher or lower, you know, just sort of depending on what the feeling is coming from, right? So it could be
yeah.
like, oh, am I getting ripped off here? You know, in terms of like you're at a market and you're like, okay, well, that sucks, but you know, there's worse things. And then, you know, so there's a different sort of, I guess, tolerance as well. I think it's good to know. You put it a good way. It's sort of a feeling rather than a thought process that's happening.
Yes. Okay.
Um,
Thank you. Can I ask you back? Like
yeah, yeah,
your
of
gut
course.
feeling. How would
Yeah,
your gut feeling feel for you?
yeah. So I would say it in two ways. Like one, sometimes when you're looking at another human being, you can tell that there are other thoughts going on as you're communicating. Like in a situation like where you're at a hotel reception where it's like very routine for both people, right? It should just be like, here's my money, the room, you know, it's very, but there are times when you can see extra processing happening on the other side. And that always makes me like think like, okay, something is happening. And sometimes maybe the person doesn't know English very well, so they're just translating or something, right? But that always kind of makes me a little bit cautious, whether I'm at a market or a taxi driver, when they're almost looking at me like trying to calculate something. It might
I
just be
understand exactly what you mean. For me, it feels like their eyes and their mouth are saying different things.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
I know exactly what you're talking about actually, but I never phrased it before. That's interesting.
Yeah, and then to add to that, I would just say there are moments where I feel like things are out of the routine. Like I get questions that are like one question I find always sets me off is like, how much is the camera, right? Or if they see the camera, or they start asking about,
Mm,
then I'm like, it's a very unusual question to ask, like the first or second question, and then I start to get like, okay, right, like there are certain things that, and because I've had, like you said, I've had experiences where people have tried to rob me or that's happened, and usually those things, like kind of like, yeah, you know what I mean? So,
yeah.
um,
Actually, when you mentioned that, how people ask the questions, that's also something I try to identify because I get the question a lot, like when I'm writing, are you alone?
mhm, mhm,
Like that. And usually, I would say like 99% of the cases, they're just like, wow, are you traveling alone? And then I get a question after that, like, but how and do you feel lonely and stuff like that.
mhm,
Sometimes though, people ask me that, like, are you alone? In another tone. And I
mhm.
feel like I shouldn't say right now that I am alone here. because then I'm a target. So sometimes I say like, no, I'm meeting up my boyfriend in the next city, or my boyfriend is getting over here soon. And I don't know, sometimes I don't know, it's just a feeling, and it doesn't hurt anybody if I lie about that.
Yeah.
I just say like, yeah.
Yeah, like the caution, it doesn't hurt, right? Like to take the
Yeah.
precaution, but the risk, you're like, well, that could be, worse. So it's like, at worst, you change the hotel, or you don't buy that whatever it is, or you tell
Mm,
a small lie, then I, I think it's
yeah.
totally fine.
Mm.
But that leads me to we were talked about cameras here. What kind of equipment you bring? I love talking about gear, what people pack, their bags. I'll go to people's websites, travel, and I'm like, what are they? I'm just so fascinated with like what gear you bring. So what do you pack for one of these motor trips?
Well, it depends, of course, how long I'm gonna be gone and where I'm going and so on. But regarding the photo equipment, is that what
Well,
you're
just
most
all,
curious about?
just all
Everything.
of, yeah, yeah. I'm super curious about, yeah.
All right, that's another episode. No, I'm just kidding. But that's like a form of art,
Hmm.
like to pack smart and light for a motorcycle trip, and that's something I had to learn. Um, but when it comes to my photo equipment, I have everything in a backpack, which I do not recommend, honestly, because it's not good for your back to carry, yeah, heavy weight like that. But it's usually people have it in a tank bag on the motorcycle, and I don't like the style of a
Hmm.
tank bag because it takes away like the beautiful design of the tank. So I rather have it on my back and see it as like extra workout or something, to walk around with that weight. But I do have a drone with me, a DJI Mavic 2 Pro, which I'm very happy about. I do have a few extra lenses for the sun filters and stuff to put on the drone. And then there are two different controllers for a drone, and I take the smaller one that I can put on my phone because
Hmm.
it takes up less space and it's lighter. And then I have a mount on the handlebars called quad lock, where I attach the controller together with the phone, so I can ride and steer my drone at the same time. So that's how I
That's
do
how
it.
you
Like
do
when
it. Okay.
That's how I do it. Yes. Sometimes I put it on like follow me mode or something like that, but usually I don't like that one. I want to have full control of the frame. So
Mhm.
then I practice first, like how I want to have it, like while I'm standing still, so I know like how to move my thumb uh, on the controller while I'm riding, and then I do the actual shooting. Um, and then I have my other camera, for like normal
Mhm.
photography, or how to call it, and that's a Sony Alpha 7C. I'm very happy about that one as well. And I used to have a Tamron lens, but
Mhm.
then a truck driver in Patagonia thought that it was the end of that lens's life. So it went to the ground. I had my camera on a tripod. Oh, that's also something I bring, a tripod.
Mhm.
So I had my camera on the tripod, and I was taking photos of the bike and me on the bike, and then a truck driver just,
Ooh.
passed by me in the speed of light with like 1 centimeter between me and him. So I'm very thankful that I was okay, the bike was okay, but the camera just fell to the ground with the
Mm.
wind, and the lens broke, but the camera was okay, so that's fine. So now I have a Sony lens. I don't even know the name of it, to be honest.
No, no, yeah, that it's interesting, like how how you break it down also, but weight seems to be important, right? Size and weight of everything.
Yes, for sure. And when I'm packing, I always I have two big rules that when I'm packing clothes, it doesn't matter if I'm gonna be away for like 5 months, like my recent trip, or for like a month. I always pack like I'm gonna be away for like 7 days, and then I just wash. stuff.
Hmm.
So that's how I'm thinking, 7 days. And of course, climate, like 7 days. And then maybe also maybe I need like a swimming suit, but I also need like a very thick layers because like Patagonia, very, very cold,
Hmm.
but then Brazil, very, very hot. So I need to pack for both climates. Then I have a GoPro 360 camera, um, and I film a lot with my iPhone.
Hmm.
I think that's it. I need to think now. I've tried out, sometimes I bring stuff that I don't use.
Hmm.
I had some sort of pocket camera that I was thinking, okay, maybe that's better for like vlogging, but then no, I just used my phone.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not into having like a lot of different kind of things, and it always takes time for me to start using it because I'm not one of those like tech nerds. I love
Hmm.
photography, but yeah, that's a different story, I guess, with the tech stuff. And external memory, like an external, what is it called?
Hard drive?
Hard drive.
Hard drive?
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yes. And then, of course, charging stuff for
Yeah.
everything. And I try that out at home before leaving so I don't bring too many cables or that I miss a cable or something. So I always put all my photo equipment on charging at home as I would be on the road
Hmm.
before I go. Yeah. And then camping gear, if I'm gonna go camping, so tent and stove, stuff for that, sleeping bag, extra pillow. And the second rule, I only mentioned the first rule. The second rule is never ever pack air. So I roll everything, and if I have something where I could put something inside, I always do that. I never ever pack air. So that's the second rule.
That's good advice. Yeah. So I'm assuming that, in terms of like things that you pack when it's clothes, you don't have a lot of space on the bike, right? So you said for 7 days, basically, yeah, you're packing. So something that would fit like in a small backpack, more or less, type of size.
Yes. So I think that my the things for me, like clothes and stuff, yeah, stuff like that, it takes up maybe the bag the size of like a weekend bag if I would
Mhm.
go somewhere on a weekend.
And for people listening, is there anything, the people are always worried about not packing this thing that I need. Is that
Yeah.
something you find, or is it more the opposite that you usually just use what you bring, right? Like you don't find something that
Yes.
you desperately don't have with you.
And if that would happen, because if I'm standing at home and I'm looking at something like, oh, but maybe I would need this, then
Mhm.
it doesn't come with me. Never, if I think like that. Um, because when you're going somewhere, I mean, there are stores abroad as well. So you can just buy it when you get there. What's very important is like your passport and maybe your money and visas, documents for the motorcycle, insurances, stuff like that. That's important. That's things you cannot buy. But let's say if I'm standing at home and I'm holding like two similar sweaters and I think, but it could be good to have two. No, no, no. I always bring one. And then if I would need another one when I'm there, I'm just gonna buy one more.
Mhm.
Like this, I'm actually wearing a shirt right now that I had to buy because I wanted to buy a Patagonia shirt in Patagonia. That was like a thing for me. And I needed something long sleeved, but thin.
Mhm.
And now, I mean, I love this shirt because it reminds me of my trip. So it becomes like a souvenir, but a souvenir that I just didn't buy just because I wanted to buy something in Patagonia. I
Mhm.
actually had to buy something that I needed and I used it the whole trip.
And how do you coordinate now when you're traveling, filming and creating content, ha and then balance that with also like buying clothes that you might need for a souvenir or just enjoying the travel? Do you find that a difficult balance? How does that work?
Sometimes it's difficult, yes. But I always try to plan for, how can I say, if I think that a trip will take me around 1 week, I plan for 2 weeks. So that gives me enough time to, if I want to stay an extra night somewhere, I can do that. Because I it's hard to plan between work and enjoy the place where I'm going sometimes. It was especially hard in the beginning where I thought that I needed to work very hard all the time and take photos all the time, stay relevant on social media all the time because I was so afraid I would lose what I had. Today, it's very different. Today, I'm more afraid of losing the experience of being somewhere. So I would say that South America is one of my best trips when it comes to that balance, where I just thought that it doesn't matter if I take one more photo here or not.
Mhm.
Nobody's gonna die. So let's just sit down and enjoy this instead of try to capture it with your camera as well as you can. And same with work. I plan for work days. So if I know that I have a lot of work to do, I plan to maybe stay in the same place for 3 or 4 nights. And then I just dedicate like a full or 2 full days for work. And then I know like, okay, this is work time. Um, but yeah, it's a hard balance sometimes, but I would say I'm much better at it today. And I don't update my social media in real time
Mhm.
because it's impossible. I cannot, like wake up early in the morning. I answer a few emails, comments on Instagram and stuff like that, and call my loved ones. And then I'm gonna ride the whole day. And as you said, I'm gonna find somewhere to sleep. I need to find somewhere to eat and plan the maps and the route and everything. And then I arrive in the evening, and then I'm gonna edit photos and update on social media and stuff like that. No, I want to go out. I
Mhm.
want to explore the city where I am or the place that I booked or whatever. So I capture as much as I can while I'm traveling, and then I update when I have time, basically. So right now I'm back home in Sweden, but I still have like more than 2 countries
Mhm.
left that I can update about. And but that's also nice because it feels like I relive my trip when I'm doing like that. And I think it's important for people to know too, like don't pressure yourself too much because then that pressure that you had at the office and the freedom that you wanted to have, you're gonna lose that if you turn your new lifestyle into the same kind of like procedure.
Mhm.
So, but that's something I need to remind myself of sometimes. But
Yeah,
I think I'm
yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You think you're
no,
getting
don't
better
worry.
at it, or how?
Yes, that's what I was gonna say. I'm better at it now. Yeah.
Well, that's good. Yeah, yeah. No, I can understand. I can relate to that where it's like
Yeah.
you leave working, but then you still have that whatever ambition, or I don't know
Mm.
if it's like a habit or what it is, but then you just want to like, oh, I can create so much content. I can do this, I can do that. And then you realize like, oh, wait a minute, I'm just doing the kind of the same thing, but in different places, you know?
Exactly, exactly. But I think that's, as you say, it's a mindset. Um, and if you've been working your whole life or studying full time and stuff like that, it's hard to finally have all of this freedom.
Hmm.
Sometimes I feel bad, like if I'm just sitting down doing nothing, it's like, should I do something right now? I have time right now for stuff.
Hmm.
And there's always something you could do, but is it burning? Like, do you have to do it right now?
Hmm.
And if the answer is no, well, you might just as well enjoy your new
Enjoy.
lifestyle.
I I like that as a philosophy. I think that is a important thing that we can all kind of take away. I like the way you phrase that. There's one thing that I like to ask all travelers, um, because I've had these kind of moments, and I always am interested to hear if you've had these kind of moments, which is there a time or a place or just one instance where you said, I can't believe this is my life. I can't believe I'm looking at this thing. And yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just all the time,
Mhm.
all the time. I cry about it. I cry because I'm so grateful. It happened, that was in the beginning of Patagonia, in southern Chile, in Torres del Paine. It's a very, very beautiful national park. And I was just riding this beautiful little gravel road, And I came around a corner, and after that corner, I saw this big lake and the mountains and the road ahead of me just continuing to this beautiful, beautiful landscape. And I had to stop my bike. I was weeping like a baby. It was like, is this my life? Is this what I'm doing? I could still be at the office right now. But no, I'm not. I'm out here. I'm doing this. This is my life. And sometimes even when I'm looking at the motorcycle, I'm like, wow, I'm riding that thing here right now. This is what I'm doing. This is my job. Oh, I'm very grateful. And I think that's because I really don't take it for granted. I've been thinking since like day one that maybe this disappears tomorrow. Maybe I cannot continue doing this anymore like next week. And that makes me so grateful for everything that I have today. And that I'm allowed to continue doing this like this. Yeah, no, I'm just very happy about what I'm doing. So I guess the answer is yes, I feel like that a lot.
Well, that is amazing. I think it's very inspirational. I think a lot of people watching and listening will take away that maybe I should try that whatever that is thing that I want to do. Don't put it off. You never know what will happen, and you'll have maybe some of those moments which are just really special. It's like those are the moments that you kind of will keep with you and you sort of treasure. Um,
Yes.
And I won't ask you now what you're planning next because I know you're not planning. I'm not going to put that pressure on you. So I'll just ask where people can find you and just see kind of where you've been and the stories that are coming up. There's still two more countries. Where are all the places people should find your videos, your photos?
Right now, I'm most active on Instagram,
Mhm.
and my Instagram name is Hanna.c.Johansson because Hanna Johansson is like the most common name in Sweden. So I had to throw in my middle
Uh,
name, C. But also, right now, I'm looking for an editor that's going to help me to cut for a YouTube series. So I
mhm.
have recorded a lot of content, but I haven't done anything with it yet. It's on that hard drive I told you about. So hopefully, Hanna.c.Johansson on YouTube will have some interesting episodes coming up this summer.
I will leave links in the show notes and the description box where everybody can find you. I hope they check it out. I'm excited to see the YouTube series in particular and just sort of
Thank
get
you.
an idea of that, the trip from that perspective of you know sort of I know how it works, right? It's this long trip and then you cut it down and it's just to see those little moments of how you get from point A to point B with all the little weird highlights, but the
Mm.
odd things that happen. Yeah. So I hope everyone checks it out. Thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you.
Um,
Me too.
and I will just add a small thing here, which is one of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you is because I have this trip in my head. I've had this for probably 20 years. I saw Long Way Round. I'm sure, yeah, you're familiar with it.
Yes, 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 yes.
When I first read the book and then I watched it, I guess the miniseries or the whatever miniseries they made. But when I first read the journals of that, I was like, I have to recreate that trip one day. It is one of my life goals that
Wow.
I want to recreate the trip from, London to New York. I really, really, really want to do it. I don't know how yet. Logistically, it's a little bit more difficult now due to the path, but it's something that I really want to do. So you've kind of inspired me a little bit more. Maybe I should put that a little bit further up on the list, not put it off too much longer.
Do it, do it, do it. That's all I can say. Just do it. And the best thing you can, or if I would have had the same kind of dream,
Mhm,
the thing I always start with is to buy like a big, big map. And then
mhm,
I put it out on the kitchen table. And then I just start drawing. Okay, I could
mhm.
go from there to there to there. And once you've done that, when you have it on paper, then it's so much easier, to start picturing it like a real thing. buy that map and
Okay,
start.
I'm literally going to do that right now. I'm going to buy a
Please
map
do.
and do it.
I can't wait. Then you have to upload some photos of the
Some photos.
first. Yes.
Uh, I you may have just set something off in motion that my crazy trip. Yeah. Thank you so much for the advice, and thank you for your time. And if I do plan this trip, when I plan this trip, I'll be in touch for some advice on
Please,
bikes
I'm
and gear.
here. Please, I'm here. Yeah. I love that kind of stuff.
Thank you again so much for your time. Thank you everybody for listening, and I'll talk to you in the next episode. Thank you, Hanna, for being a guest on the podcast, and thank all of you for listening and watching. If you are listening to the podcast, make sure you give it a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure that you hit the subscribe and like buttons. It helps us get the word about the show out. Thank you all again for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.